Hey everybody, Kevin here from Invisible Insights, and today we're going to be talking about the whole idea of succession when it comes to our own position within our own sphere of leadership. Now, a lot of folks say success is succession, and it's so true. When you have the ability to develop others, to know what you know and do what you do, your value goes up in the organization. And so in this session, we're going to talk about what does it mean to be able to develop number twos. We've talked about what it means to become a number two, but today we're going to be talking about the idea of what does it mean to develop them. Now, there's a huge advantage of this for you as an emerging leader, as a leader in an organization, as somebody who's going to be newly promoted because there's an opening and you're sliding into that. We often underestimate the level of value that we have when it comes to teaching other people what we know and what we do. And not even in just handing it off, because sometimes handoffs are abrupt and they just kind of are there's not a lot of feel to it, I guess, is what I would say. It's really about the idea of how well we hand off and how we set others up to win. And setting other people up to win is critical because then that allows us to be able to really fully engage what's next. A lot of people make this huge mistake as they're developing number twos that they kind of withhold some secret sauce. And I don't know why that is. Often when I'm coaching people through a process like this, there's moments where we're still extracting these hidden gems, these wonderful, incredible, bits of wisdom that either they don't think about is all that important, but in reality, it is critical. And so once we can kind of pull all that out and give that away and really set the other person up for success, the leader can fully engage the promotion and what's going on. Because when you don't do that, it's often that the person who's been promoted gets pulled back into conversations or into meetings or brings newer and different levels of clarity to the situation. And it can be a real bummer sometimes in terms of really trying to get off to a great start in your new role when you got to keep going backwards before you go forwards. And that's not something that you're going to want to do. What you want to be in that, as you develop number twos, is you want to be that coach or that person who is that encourager and that mentor from a distance. And you want that distance to increase. That's what we want. That would be a good thing. And what happens is when there are smooth handoffs like this, boy, I tell you what, your influence in the organization gets big because the people that matter will notice. They will truly notice because we're just not good at this. So as we talk about this whole concept of developing number twos, and again, we're going to get real tactical in future videos. But in this one, it's really an overview of what the real essential elements are of being a great number two and developing a great number two. And so I hope that you find this to be helpful. And so why don't we dig in and let's figure this thing out here. Let me put you up here. All right. So there is, you definitely want you to the second power. I mean, that's what we're calling it that. It's developing great number twos. And what we find out is in organizations, really only 16% of individuals, actively and consistently invest their time, energy, and attention that really strategically identify and develop people for succession. We just kind of do our thing. And I feel like if there's anything you don't remember from today, it's this whole idea that you need to be thinking about who your number two is. Who are the people who are not necessarily, I'm not talking about another you. I'm talking about people with the capacity, right? With the character, with the competence. Those are the 3 C's. Man, if they got good character and they got good competence and they have good capacity, to really hold it and really understand it, man, I'll tell you, you can't beat that. And so think of it through the lens of those three C's. When you think of the three C's, you're thinking through this lens of, hey, where is this a person I trust? Right? Is this person really understand and know and can perform every day? And do they have the ability to handle the responsibilities? Because when you develop a number two, you're offsetting those responsibilities to them, and as they take on those responsibilities, it gets real, and it's a challenge for many of them for a season. So, but you think of this is a sad number. It really is. And the question we always ask is why, right? So when we look at what's the one thing that prevents emerging leaders to become strong number twos? It's generally the number ones. It's the person in charge. Sometimes it's just work. And let me tell you something. Let me give you a little secret sauce here on, if we look for someone and they got the three C's and we start identifying who that person is, we tend to think of it's like, oh my gosh, I have another job if I go and try to hand this stuff off. It's not about that. It's about delegation. It's strategic delegation, because you ultimately have three lists. You have a list of the things that only you can do in your role. You have the list of the things you have to do in your role, and you have the list of things that others can do. Now, it's real easy to get rid of a lot of the other stuff. And we tend to generally go in that direction. We tend to generally lean into this idea that I can just get rid of these things. I don't like doing them anyway. But really, the list that you really need to attack is the have-to-do list, not the others can do list. The others can do list is stuff that if it doesn't happen consistently, no one kind of loses their mind. It's those kinds of things that kind of that float around and that you kind of pick off, here and there when you need to. But the have-to-do lists are those essential things that really do move the needle, that do take work, that do take energy, do take attention, and do it take attention? Okay, that does take attention. And so when you do that, when you start giving those key things away, then it starts opening up the opportunity for you to really see what they have. And often, the number ones, we might delegate the others can do list, and then we just kind of think we're kind of develop them, and in reality they're not prepared at all to be able to jump into. And you got to remember too, if the opportunity comes to you, if we look through the lens of opportunity for a pivot, for a promotion, when that opportunity comes to you, you want to be able to move forward and put your attention into that. And so preparing somebody to do what you do, even looking at some of those only you can do's and being real strategic about doing them with them, hey, come here, I want you to see how I'm doing this. Not that you'll ever do it. Maybe someday you'll do it, but I just want you to know what goes into this. And so you're more intentional about allowing them to have a glimpse of what's going on in the only you can do list, but really allowing them to take more responsibility in the have-to-do list. So think about that, because it's so important. But typically, we're the bottleneck here, and we just got to change our perspective and change our purview when it comes to those rising stars that are on our team, because we can just throw them all the wrong stuff. So don't do that. So let's move on. So we have to mind the gap. Most positional leaders unknowingly sabotage the development of number twos. And they limit their own success and long-term success of their team and the organization as a result of that. And that's something we have a gap there that we got to mind, and we just have to make sure that we turn our departments as leaders into little micro learning organizations. You have to have a mindset. And as you mind that gap, you got to keep giving people opportunities. Think through the lens. I told someone this one time, and it was really interesting. But imagine your team is on a reality show for your job. And if you had a reality show for your job and you were trying to think of all the cool things to do for each episode of that reality show, and there are 10 episodes, what would be the things that you would give them, that you would film, and that you would go into, so that when you had to announce the winner at the end of the reality show in terms of who that would be, what would that look like? Now, I'm not advocating you doing this, okay? I'm talking about a mental model here, okay? I'm talking about the idea of, hey, I might want to put some people in some situations to see how they handle it. I might want to spend some time with some people and let them have a glimpse of my only can-do list. and shoulder up with them side by side. I might want to turn some of my have to do's into some project work and to give them a beginning and the end of a project so that they can like unpack that a little bit. And then the level of articulation they have about what they're doing in that project will give me some information as to what they can handle. Maybe a little bit more of showing me what the capacity they have when they can do a project along the same time of being able to do their day job. All those kinds of things come into play. I need you to be thinking through that lens. As somebody who wants a position for opportunity and growth in an organization, if you are a leader of any kind, this is some element that you have to, a skill probably, that you have to develop in terms of how you perceive your team and how you give them opportunities in the midst of the day to day. So be thinking about that. Who are those folks? And listen, don't play favorites. This is not about like, hey, I think, I like Jimmy. He looks like a, no, it's not about who looks. It's about who can, who will, who has the capacity, who has the character, and who has the competency. Okay? So let's make sure we're digging into that. Mind the gap, my friends. So, but there are some sabotage structures that we do sometimes. So I'm just going to call you out in advance because there are probably things that you complain about the others above you in the organization. Or if you're the boss in this situation, you might want to. We'll sing the music and the altar is open and everybody can come for confession. But these are the big ones that I feel like that come up over and over again when I talk to emerging leaders about their frustrations. And one of those is micromanaging. No one wants to be micromanaged. No one wants to be, hovered over and always like, monitored the whole time. And micromanaging, it really does diminish trust on a team. When you're, so over the top. And I get it. In some organizations, quality is very important, and you want to pay attention to quality. But there should be a system, and there should be clear communication about that system, so that that person doesn't feel like you're just like you don't trust them and you don't believe in them. Another one's withholding information. I see that so much that we don't slow down enough to explain the why behind things. And so what happens is they're often, trying to operate at a level in order to care about what it is that they're doing. But if they don't have a why, there's no meaning in it. If there's not any meaning in it, it's really hard for them to get really emotionally engaged in terms of what's going on, in terms of what they're doing. Listen, you have to give them all the information. It's important that you give them all the information. You can't tell them certain things. I mean, there's certain things that maybe in a meeting that was talked about or discussed, that's a higher level meeting, but you can certainly you can reframe it and put it in a way that they can understand, so they're not trying to connect the dots. Because if they're spending time trying to connect the dots of what this means, they're really not focusing on accomplishing the mission and the goal that you've set out for them. Another one is failing to provide feedback. And you look at feedback loops, we're not good at giving good feedback. And when we talk about feedback, it's just not even about saying good, like, hey, good job. That's not feedback. Feedback is very important. They need to know, hey, when you saw this, when I saw you the other day, take the time to slow down and double check your measurements on that, because you wanted to make sure that we didn't, do a whole run in the wrong size. Man, I can't tell you how I really appreciate how you took that time to slow down to go fast. That is really a good thing. I noticed in the past you might have been somebody, who pushed through stuff and then we would have to fix it later. But man, the level of care that you have right now, I want more of that. That is a good thing. And so when you give them detailed feedback of what it is that you saw and why they did what they did and how you appreciate what they did, those are just, man, that's good stuff. And then we look at the whole idea of, undermining authority. That's a big one for folks. And that's where I give someone the ability to make a call. And then if people around them are upset and they come to me, I kind of massage it and let them have their way, but then have to come back to you and then tell you that well, actually, I really want to rethink what I really want out of this. And you're kind of going like, dude, you're looking at like me going like, come on, man. I put all this energy into this thing, and I got straight with the team on that kind of thing, and now they're mad a little bit. But can we all sit down and work this out? Instead, you went ahead and changed the outcome of what we're trying to do, and now you kind of blew me off. You blew me up in front of everybody else. That's not cool. And so undermining authority is, and I'll tell you what, I'm telling you, you do it once, maybe twice. You might, if with an apology, you might get away with a second time, but you do that, it's a hard one to come back from. It just is. And last sabotage structure we bump into is the idea of refusing to delegate. Man, and there's so many opportunities in delegation. And I know that we're busy, and I know that, I can do it faster if I just did it, and I'll have to, every one of these has some element of I'm afraid that if I slow down, I'm going to miss out on something. I won't be able to perform. But getting things done through people will eventually exponentially make you faster, like 10x faster. It's a matter of knowing when to slow down, when to take that right step and saying, hey, I can delegate this to someone. I know that they're only going to do it 80% as good as me. That's the one thing with delegation we all have to understand and just come to Jesus on. It all really does come down to the fact that, hey, you know what? If I delegate this to you, you're probably only going to do it 80% as good as me. And that means I still have to be somewhat engaged, not micromanaging, but more providing feedback, reinforcing the why, encouraging, and really trusting that they're going to get this done, and knowing that 80% will turn into 85%, will turn into 90%, that we know that over time it will improve. And yes, the level of checking quality or following through and making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, all those things are essential as you delegate, but you're doing it with them, not for them and not to them. That's very important, because if you were to do all that, then that would send that message to them that you don't trust them, and then why would I ever want to be a number two? Let me be a half of a number two, a 1.5. Why would you want me to be a 2? So that's kind of something that it's really important to think through here in terms of what your sabotage structures are. So this is the part where we do have to confess. What are yours? What are the ones that you struggle with the most? And undermining authority isn't a mean thing. Some people go like, well, usually it's that fear of conflict that kicks in, that we start trying to massage things. And then the next thing you know is we kind of went on our own little mission. We think we sanded all the rough edges off of this, and it doesn't look like anything that we wanted it to look like when we started, in terms of the personalities. And then you got a leader who's like this, going like, okay, if you just wanted to do it, why wouldn't you just do it? Why can't you let me do it? That's where the feedback comes in, because you can coach them. And instead, we just kind of do our little workarounds and smooth all the rough edges of everybody's emotions, and the next thing you know, we find ourselves somewhere where we don't want to be, especially with somebody that we genuinely trust, that we want to hand things off to, and now we've kind of blew that up. So with that said, be careful. So what is yours? And be aware of that, and start thinking about what are the things you have to do on the other side to be able to go forward, to not let it be a sabotage structure, but let it be a structure of advancement and growth. Okay, let's keep moving on. So ultimately, it is all about you. And listen, you need to have a personal and departmental vision that's big enough, so that will so much so that it will require you, that you look at this and you'll go, man, you know what? I got to prioritize the development of my team. And so often when I'm coaching young leaders and we talk about this, what's your vision? We get so much into what we have to get done in a day, we don't think about what we're becoming in a role. And I want you to think about what you're becoming and what you aspire to. When you have a vision about what it is that you want to grow into in the organization, and just in a perfect way, not in, it's like, hey, I want to be the boss. Okay, well, great. Let that be your aspiration. Let's start acting that way then. It's not about whether you're going to get it or not, because a lot of times people will say to me, well, there's no way Jim's not leaving here for another 10 years. I'm never going to get that job. Well, why is that going to mean? Why does it mean that's the job you're going to get? There might be 3 other positions that are advancing positions until you get to that place. And then when you've had those different experiences on those different rungs in the organization, now all of a sudden you're positioned perfectly to take over that for that person. As a matter of fact, you could position yourself through a number of lateral moves in an organization to where somebody goes, hey, we have this new thing we're starting, and we have somebody who's uniquely cross-trained. Why not you? Why not that person? Why not? And you want them to say, why not you? It's that way they're not thinking about going from the outside or doing anything like that. They're looking at you and they're going like, hey, there's an opportunity here. It isn't anything that this person's done before, but the competencies that this person has developed in these other 3 roles, and even though they were lateral pivots, he's got great handoffs, he's got great number 2s, he's going to have another great number 2. Let's give this guy a shot at this new position. That's when that comes your way. So we tend to put ourselves in a box. Let's not do that. And the second thing is you have to also think about how your vision connects with the number 2s, because they got to see themselves in the context of that. So when you sit down, I've got this great guy who does this, but he always said, and he's not old either. He's kind of talks like he is. He's probably in his 40s, but he's been at the company for 20 years. And so, he got there, he's young. We got there when he was young, and he's just been there, and he's just one of those pounded out, get it done guys, had a lot of lateral moves, had a lot of different positions in the organization, sits in a lot of meetings just because of his experience, and he's just found his voice in terms of wisdom of the company. And his influence isn't by position. His influence is by experience and building good teams and really great handoffs. He's just unbelievable handoffs. Great number 2s take over. He moves on and he puts his full self into the next things. And so here's this whole thing of this guy that he's got all this stuff going on. He's got these great number 2s, but what's great is he always sits down with him and says, hey, I always believe that your ability to do my job is essential for me to be successful. So he's like, you need to be able to do what I do. So everyone in this department, and in many cases, he's had as many as 8 people in the department that he's led, 8 direct reports. He said, hey, I'm going to develop each and every one of you so you're capable of doing what I do. And we don't miss a beat when I'm gone. If I'm in a meeting, I know you guys can carry on without me. You don't need me. So this is how I'm going to build this. But he goes, at the same time, I need you to perform at the highest level in terms of your role currently as well. So yes, I'm going to ask things of you. And if you want to be in my department, that's great. If you want to get out of my department, you can apply to get out of my department and go somewhere else. But ultimately, I'm going to be committed to your ability and your success to be able to take over for me. I don't know if any of you will or who will. That's what I do. That is my philosophy. And he just does that. And every time, I would walk in there sometimes in his department and there would be different people. He has this little stand-up desk in his little area that he, charts things out. And I'll see different number of those guys at different days when I show up that are standing at that little desk directing traffic. And they're the ones who are checking some of the work and doing, and I could tell he's being very strategic in what he delegates. Listen, they see themselves in the context of that vision. When they see themselves, they go, hey, I can give myself to this. I could do that. And that is an ultimate part of being a secondary vision caster in the organization. And we talk about this. We talk about the importance of secondary vision casting. And sometimes that secondary vision casting isn't just limited to that of the organization. It's also secondary vision casting talks about where you see yourself in this organization. So when an organization casts a big vision about what it wants to do, you're looking at your team and say, hey, look, our vision for our organization is this. And I truly believe that I want to be a part of that. I see myself in that vision. And my hope is that you will see yourself in the vision that I have for this department. and what I want to do. My hope is to continue to grow and get more opportunities. And my hope for all of you is to succeed me in this arena. And I want to give each and every one of you the chance to learn and grow and understand. And if I lose some of you to other departments as leaders, I'll take that. But in this season, when you're with me, this is what I want for you. This is what I want, what's best for you. So I'm going to be delegating to each of you different roles at different times, very strategically throughout the year. And I want you to understand why I'm doing it. And buddy, that is like the essence of bringing it, saying, I'm seeing myself up here. I see you where I'm at. And I want to give every one of you an opportunity to be able to learn and know and do what I do and what I know. And that is a big part of that journey. It is all about you. And you have to be on your A game, thinking about this as a pro and digging into it. Good deal? So, hey, let's keep moving on, because once you kind of get in that mode, you start thinking about, what do I target on? What do I, get after? Well, it's strategic, casting vision. And it's really important that it's, and strategic, it's intentional, it's disciplined. And so we have to think about casting a vision and building a framework and scheduling on your calendar and consistent behaviors. It paves the way for discovery, development of potential number twos. It just does. Just like we talked about, just like I shared with you. And in this case, that guy has gotten, I think, 2 promotions in the organization. It's a large organization. And I think there's lots of room for him to grow. And he's now, I think what's really cool too, of the guys in his department, many of them are up he's pulled them up multiple levels, because he was asking for a guy who was his number 2. When he went up another level, he took that 2 up another level, but that 2 was a great number 1 who developed number 2s. And guess what he did? He had number 2 in the organization. He is the pathway. His team is where they go and tap when they need new levels and new people and leaders all over the organization. It is definitely epic. And guess what? When you cast vision and you build a framework and schedule it on your calendar and consistent behaviors, it does pave the way. And you just have to get into that part of it. So, yes. So 5 moves: consistent vision casting, organizational and individual in one-on-one conversations, really important. Connecting and giving them a front row seat, making decisions around the big picture. Give them a chance around what's going on. Pull them around when you're trying to solve a problem. Let them have a front row seat and what goes on in that. There has to be congruence between what we say and what we do when it comes to providing a path, which means that we got to give them opportunities. That have-to-do list. It's almost like you hand those cards out to people and give them a chance to shine, and then coaching them, giving them great feedback, teaching them to see things they need to see and why they need to see it. And that requires you to slow down and give epic levels of feedback, and then give them permission to question the process. Now, this isn't invisible. Often we want to ask why, but we don't want to offend anyone. And a lot of emerging leaders struggle with that. You need to be permission giving and saying, look, if you think there's a better way, I need to hear what that is. Because there's a lot of wisdom that lives in the floor, in the day-to-day. And chances are, as you've come up into the ranks of the organization, you have done that too. You have questioned the process. And that question of the process might have shaken the trees a little, but then when they see it, where you're coming from on that, all of a sudden now you have gained influence. And the key is not getting defensive when they ask tough questions, because they will. But it's about leaning into it and trusting them to really understand what it is and why it is. And let me tell you something. Sometimes we have sucky answers for people. Sometimes we are horrible when it comes to answering their questions about why we do something the way we do it. And it might be just because we've always done it that way, and we don't have a better answer than that. So it's important that you hear the question, because it checks you too. We often operate in a realm of assumptions sometimes, where all of a sudden we wake up and we go like, I really don't know why we do that way. Well, you're never going to be able to teach it and hand it off effectively if you don't know the whys. So these guys asking questions, really important. Okay, dig into that. So what are really those skills that we got to really burn into them? And I would highly recommend that you put this in the list, because these are kind of the elemental skills that you need to be developing. You need to develop in them the ability to hold themselves and others accountable. They need to learn from you how to delegate based on how you've delegated to them. They're only going to be able to mirror what it is that they've experienced when it comes to this. And so as they end up, many of them won't have the opportunity to delegate to other people because they're only experiencing that level of understanding of delegation through how you do it with them. So that's so important. But planning an organization, that means showing up your huddles prepared. And that means, being organized about the day and clear about what the picture is of what we're here to accomplish, and being organized with your thoughts, being organized with your team in terms of how you communicate with each other and how your stations are organized. And there's so much that goes into that. The organization is so important. And that's why I think 5S is such a really important thing for everybody in every department. It's a great, just fundamental skill set that really breeds that organization on so many levels. The next is people skills. This soft skills. It's listening. It's saying back to people what they're saying to you. Hey, John, what I'm hearing you say is this. Hey, Linda, what I'm hearing you say is this. Yes, I think let me answer your question. It's that whole idea of the ability to slow down and at the same time care for others. It's the people skills part of it really does matter, because people will do more for you because they like you than any other reason. It just is true that way. Time management is important. That means being on time. You can't demand things of others that you're not doing yourself. And you got to be at places on time. And it can't be, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. You got your team standing around waiting for you in a huddle in the morning, or if you're doing an afternoon meeting, you have to be on top of it. You cannot be late. You can't be the Mr. Apology or Miss Apology when it comes to, being on time and being prompt and getting after it. Just manage your time well. Decision making. Being decisive, but also communicative when it comes to being decisive. In other words, this is what we're going to do, but here's the 3 reasons why we're going to do it. They're not all the reasons. These are the main ones for me, and these are the ones that matter, and here's why they matter. That's when you're making a decision, it's important that they know what went into it. Hey, I was processing what was going on. There are 3 things I think that really matter when it comes to making a decision around this. These are these 3 things. You might question the process on my thinking on this, but I'm going to land on these 3. And I'm sure there are probably more, but this is what I believe we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do. And I need your support in terms of how we do it. So, hey, help me with this. And then let's come back and talk about it, because if I'm wrong, I'm okay being wrong, but I'm leaning and trusting in my abilities, in my experience, and I'm trusting in you guys to help pull this together and get this done. And we're going to learn what we need to learn from it. Let's keep moving forward. But that decision making is so key. Adaptability is another one. It's that whole idea of especially when there's some questioning the process, that ability to go, you know what, that's not a bad idea. Let's put that in there. That little bit of the adaptability. Or, hey, sometimes somebody walks down from on high and says, well, you got to do it this way. And you got to rally your team around that. And that brings in the problem-solving piece of it. That adaptability and problem-solving element is something they need to experience from you, but they need to experience it from you as a teacher. Not like, we got a problem, we got to solve it, we got to get this done, but with not any kind of essence of like, guys, someday you're going to be in this situation. Someday we're going to have things that are going to come down, decisions that are made way above us without all the information. As much as we'd want to have it, because of the nature or the speed of the situation, we're going to have to be really adaptable, and we're going to have to be really problem-solving mindset here and tackle this effectively. And then obviously the communication piece of it is so important. It's communicating laterally through the organization with other departments that you're working with and working through, as well as down on the team, as well as up, and making sure that you're communicating effectively in every arena. That is just a true sign of maturity and growth as a leader. And as you develop others to be able to communicate effectively with you, man, that's a huge win. Because if I can go 3 layers deep and my team communicate with me really well, I can then go into a meeting and go, I was talking to John, and John told me that these are the things he's seeing in his what's coming in his department from the other department, and these are the things that he's considered. And as you more articulate about that, you build more trust. And then obviously the last one's leadership, and leadership is that sense of, hey, you know what? There's going to be congruence between what I say and how I act. And leadership means that, you know what? The higher I go up with responsibilities, I know I have less rights. I don't get to complain. I don't get to blame. I don't get to defend. There's lots of things when you go up, and as you bring your team up, if you elevate your team, you start saying, hey, look, we are not going to be excuse givers. We're not going to be crybabies. We're not going to be, blaming, complaining, or defending about anything. We're going to situationally pause. We're going to make good decisions about what we need to do in light of that pause, and then we're going to move forward. And that's really ultimately how we're going to tackle every single day as a team. And I just want to encourage you guys, as you look at this list, that you get intentional about developing this framework for you in terms of how you elevate the people that are under your purview. You're a steward of them. And so steward them well and bring them along and let them get a front row seat to how this is all coming together, because it's going to be epic. And as you develop them, trust me, you do these things well as a strong number one over a department leading others, you're going to see this turn. Think about this. You're going to see as your team develops these skills, you're going to see your whole unit go to another level. And that is going to be phenomenal and exciting. And that's ultimately what we're trying to build here. We're trying to build the mindsets around the ideas that, hey, we have a big vision. And in that big vision, we have opportunity for us within it. And as we see ourselves within it, tackling and the opportunities that come, we have to develop others who can come behind us and effectively take over for us, so we can fully engage into what's next in our leadership and in our lives. And that is really the essence of developing that number two and why it's so important. And I will say, hey, if we all did that, if we all did it, what would happen? What would be different? What would change? What would be the thing that would be different in our department, or on the floor, or in the organization, or what would happen with communication? Think of all the sideways energy that would just come down notches as we continue to expand and grow. Think about how powerful that would be and how much fun it would be to be able to bring that to the table. So develop the number twos. Be a great number one, because as you do this, you will grow in ways you never thought. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. So, hey, do some damage out there. If you got questions, you got my contact information right here. Just check it out. You can always hit me up. You can text me. You can email me. I love your thoughts on this, and just let me know how it goes. And we're going to keep talking about this and keep developing. As you're a secondary vision caster, and as you're developing number twos, that number two word becomes a real important number, doesn't it? So, hey, let's be thinking about it that way, and let's do some damage out there.